Glue's all set up on our mash paddle here now, so we can go at this with our hand plane to get these joints flushed up with all the other pieces. And I'm just going to try to be conscious of the way the grain runs on these. You can really get these cleaned up nicely with a good sharp scraper. Okay, now that I have the all the joints plane flush, I'm going to go ahead and mark my angles for the bottom of these arms, and I'm just going to take a straight edge here, and using the bottom of the handle piece as a reference, I'm going to mark a line straight across and move to the other side and do the same thing. Once we've established this angle here, we can just take our protractor and lean it up against here and lock it in. And with that angle, we can go up here and give ourselves the same angle as the bottom. Once you got all your surface planing done and all your joints are where you want them, you're going to go back in with a block plane, and you're just going to chamfer these edges because you don't want them chipping off. And you just want a nice visually appealing chamfer on those. Across these edges too, especially on these edges, because they'll be touching the bottom of the container and you don't want it chipping off down in there. Now you'll know that when your chamfers are correct whenever that corner is right in line with the rest of the corner. So you just keep working that edge until it's right where it needs to be. Here on the bottom of the paddle, we want a nice chamfer around all four corners on these, because they'll have constant contact on the bottom of the container and they'll undergo a lot of stress. So we want a nice chamfer on those. So get what you can with the block plane. You'll notice how I'm going down across the grain. And then here in the areas that you might have a hard time getting with the block plane, just kind of go at it with a nice wide chisel, which is the simplest way I could think of, because it's kind of hard to get that block plane in some of these. So you can hit that with your chisel, and if you're careful, you can get a nice result out of that. All the glue is set up for the bow tie and the dovetail joints down here, so it's all put together plain, flush and smooth, and everything's set in place. I've got all the edges here, all the sharp edges are feathered out with just a piece of sandpaper, and I used a file before, and I'm just going to wipe down everything to look for some flaws here with a piece of tack cloth before we move into the carving on the head here. Using 2 or 3 different types of French curves, I've come up with this sort of weird, eccentric kind of cutout for this handle up here. I don't know exactly what inspired that, but I just went at it with some French curves, and that's what I came up with. I think it'll look fine. Right here where I have these dark shaded areas, I'm going to relief carve that. So there will be just a light relief carving here, and then the rest will be full stock thickness. To get this roughed out, I'm going to use a coping saw to get us started. And with the blade positioned inside of the handle here, so that it cuts on the pull stroke, and that'll put pressure down against my bench. And I'm using a hold fast with a long piece of leather doubled up so that it holds it underneath of the stock and on top as well. We got the handle roughed out with a saw. Now we can go at it with our rasps to shape it. And before you start that, you want to cut a chamfer on the back side of your workpiece. Otherwise, when you run your file across it, you're going to blow out that back side. done all the damage I could do with my set of rasps that I have. So I'm going to go at this with a card scraper. I'll just try to get a nice, especially on this end grain, try to get a nice smooth cut across there. Because the sandpaper and your files really just kind of distort that grain. This card scraper is nice and sharp, so it'll give it a nice cut on that end grain. Now that the handle's roughed out, I decided not to do the carving here, the relief carving that I talked about earlier, just because I think that the shape alone is enough for that. I don't think I need to take that any farther, so I'm going to go ahead and check all of my joints one more time, make sure there's no gaps, and if there are, I'll repair those. And I'll also check and make sure there's no big gouges that I need to work out prior to doing my finishing sand. So I'll go ahead and hit this with 320. That seems to be the good starting point after scraping with a card scraper. Now I already have one coat of finish put on this, and I put it on last night. And this sellable finish is what I'm using, which is a urethane and an oil top coat. And it really does a nice job on food safe applications like this, because this will go down into the mash and will come in contact with something that'll be consumed. So I'm going to use it. I suppose you could probably get away with making a urethane and oil mixture on your own with maybe using some linseed oil and urethane. I've never tried it. This stuff's cheap enough. I just get a can of it, and for all the more that I do stuff like this, I just get a small can, and it seems to do just fine. But there seems to be somewhat of a an argument going on, or a debate rather, on whether or not you should finish these mash paddles. And I have to say, from the little bit of research I did and my experience with cutting boards and that type of thing, you definitely want to finish these for sure. And once the finish is cured, it's not going to leave a residual taste in your mash or anything like that. Even though there'll be some heat in the mash, and I understand that, but give this enough time to set up. I say give it a week after your last coat, above 70 degrees, and you'll be fine for sure. But I do not recommend leaving these unfinished, because you're giving that wood an opportunity to really absorb that water into the cells, and then it's going to expand and contract at a level that'll crack the wood, and you're just setting yourself up for failure that way. So I definitely recommend putting a finish on. I'm doing 2 coats. I think that'll be plenty. And that'll just get down inside of those cells and the fibers and give the opportunity for that water to release rather than absorb all the way through the wood. So that's my take on finishing these. But with that said, this is the last coat. We've got everything shaped and smooth. Once this finish sets up and cures, after about 6 to 12 hours, I'll go back and I'll hit it with 320 grit sandpaper. But before that, I'll let this, I'm just wiping this oil on with a rag, and I'll come back in 5 minutes or so and just wipe off the excess. But this concludes the mash paddle build, guys. I appreciate you watching the series. If you have a video that you'd like to see me do, or any kind of hand tool demonstration, just give me a shout out in the comments section, and I'll try to see if I can get a video put together on whatever you're interested in seeing. I think my next video will probably be a dovetail video, or a mortise and tenon, or that type of thing. So just keep your eyes open for that, and make sure you share the videos, especially the mash paddle build. There's a lot of good joinery here. So if you like what you see, just give me a share. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. I appreciate you coming by, guys. I'll see you in the next video.